Welcome to Two Guys and Hockey Talk, Season 4. I believe this is episode 8, Pavel the Cat.
Eight.
Eight. You have learned to count, much like the hockey scores recently around the hockey world.
Well, I was going to say 8, the great, like Alexander Ovechkin, but, we'll get into that a little bit later. The great 8. How you doing, Evan?
Hey, I'm doing fabulous, man. There is so much going on in the hockey world around the international, around Europe, around women's, around juniors, around colleges, around the world, and the NHL is going crazy early on with exciting storylines that I'm hoping we're going to get a chance to talk about after our pre-recorded episode today.
Yeah, we have a pre-recording with Joel Månsson, who came on Saturday morning. Sorry,
Karl
Månsson. I'm already forgetting things. This is old age. So I just recently celebrated a birthday. So I'm old and I'm forgetting things. So I'm older than you now, I think. And I haven't gone bald yet, but here I am. So Karl Månsson, writer for hockey, but you can introduce him a little bit more.
Yeah.
And we have some special guests coming up recently, and we have some stuff to talk about.
Well, actually, before we go into that quickly, so you just lined up a new guest for us coming up in a couple weeks?
I did. So we've got the U of A Golden Bears head coach, Howard Draper.
Pandas, I believe, right? Pandas?
Well,
Is it the Pandas?
Pandas.
Yeah.
Howard
Women's.
Draper, the head coach of the ladies team. So we're excited to have him on November 9th. So make sure you tune in, like, share, subscribe, join into our channel. We're going to have a great time. It's going to be exciting. He's going to answer your questions about coaching. Make sure you tune in and check that show out. It's going to be a great one.
And we're going to have a lot of questions. You guys can start sending them to us even at twoguyshockeytalk@gmail.com if you got questions around it, because we can talk whether it's NHL, NCAA, college, university, sports, junior. Howie's going to be able to answer a lot of those questions we have around, because sometimes we think we know more about coaching than the coaches themselves. Well, we're going to bring the man on himself, and he can share a lot more. And we also want to continue to promote the women's game. Now, next week, Lucas Ouellette of the Utah Outliers of the United States Premier Hockey League will be live on our show. He's 19. He is playing down in Utah in the USPHL. For those that are not as familiar, you can go check it out. Go check out his stats line. Right now, he is just taking off down there. Formerly had played in the Kootenay International Junior Hockey League in British Columbia, Canada, but is out of Southern Alberta from Calgary. In fact, this little connection, I played senior football and bantam football with his father, Sean Ouellette, down in Calgary in my earlier years in the 80s. So, it should be a great interview. We're going to hear from the man himself. So we're going from a 30th overall draft pick, Carl Rossiter. That was a great interview. Learned a lot of stories. The guy played and knew Pavel Bure.
Yep. He played the best Pavel out there, or maybe the second best.
All right, man. Well, I would say let's grab a bevy, but because we're going to a pre-recording this past week, I'm not going to raise my bevy. I'm going to get it while we put the recording on, and we'll do our raise our bevy when we come out of it. We have a 30-minute interview. We have Karl Månsson. I'm going to be introducing him in just a moment here. This was pre-recorded this past Saturday. We're not trying to lie to you. It's live. He is 8 hours ahead of us. It was nighttime supper for him. It was morning time wake up for us. And, of course, Pavel might be a little slow in this one. His kid kept him up all night, I'm sure, just like most other nights. Or was that your wife?
The little guy is keeping me up. He's already 4 months old, and every night there's a battle. But my wife is a trooper. She's the real rock star. She's the real MVP and Conn Smythe winner for doing all the hard work and getting into the boards. So, but anyways.
Okay, quick mention, everybody, before we go in. Remember, every Wednesday night, 7 p.m., check us out on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, all of our channels, as well as you can come on and comment live. We will get and we'll try to answer questions as we can regarding our guests and around everything that we talk about. So, all right, without further ado, why don't we go into this week's interview with Karl Månsson. So on today's show, I want to welcome Karl Månsson. You can follow him on Twitter at Karl_KHL, journalist, freelance writer. He's the editor for HockeyNews.se. He follows everything post-Soviet hockey, KHL news and stories around Russia. welcome. I believe you're over in Sweden this morning.
Thank you. No, I'm actually not. I'm in the Netherlands, which is where I live.
Okay, well, I'm totally off.
Yeah, but it's Europe. It's the same anyway.
Everything is super close. How are things over there in the Netherlands?
It's quite good. The weather's shit most of the time, but this day we're actually quite lucky, so that's very nice.
Excellent.
How are you
Excellent. Well,
doing
welcome to
over
the
in-
show. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, how are you doing? You're in Alberta somewhere?
Yes, Edmonton, where we're filming really early morning. So we have our morning cup of coffee. So I know I have mine. I don't know if Evan has yours. I don't know if you drink coffee after 5 p.m. over there or 4 p.m. or whatever time it is, but
I can't.
But welcome to the show. Welcome to Two Guys. We're excited to have you. So before we get started and get a deep dive into what you do and your writing into the KHL and post-Soviet hockey, I just wanted to ask first, what brought your passion about for hockey, and a two-parter as an aside, what got you into journalism and writing about hockey specifically?
Yeah, so we're in hockey, so it's something that I grew up with, just like most kids do. I bet you guys did as well. I never managed to play the sport, unfortunately, due to the costs. But yeah, all my life I followed hockey. And second part about like getting into journalism is also kind of random. As I started writing a bit on the KHL, tweeting about it on the side, and managed to land a gig at HockeyNews.se. So I'm actually not an educated journalist at all, as I'm, it's totally random. So yeah, that's how I got into hockey journalism.
That's pretty cool. Now I'll let Evan ask the next question, but before I do, I've always wondered, and Karl, you don't have to answer this. This is just kind of out there in the universe. Is you think about costs of raising somebody in hockey and putting them through hockey school and hockey academy. I wonder if the cost would be somewhat different or similar in Russia, in Sweden, in Finland, in Canada. I know the Canada, US are almost a little similar, but just food for thought, right? Because you just mentioned that it was a little pricey over there in Europe. So just interesting. But Evan, you had a question?
Yeah, no. So before we get into this, so we're going to have a lot of questions around the KHL for you, Karl. Thank you again so much. It's an honor to have you guys, have you on here today. Totally apologize thinking you were over in Sweden just because you write for Hockey SE, the Netherlands. So, and actually I should have known that because I knew you were into teaching, and I totally blanked out. So I'm going to call that my early morning. If you're following with us right now here on Two Guys in Hockey Talk, guys, be sure to like, follow, subscribe to us either on Twitter or on one of our handles. But this is a pre-recording that we've done previously. We are 8 hours difference in time zone, and Karl did not want to wake up at like 3 a.m. to answer questions for us. So you won't be able to ask him live, but if you have any questions, be sure to put them in. And if he doesn't answer them somewhere here today, we will make sure to send them over his way. And or in fact, you can actually even just follow him on Twitter. And so I have our handle over here on Twitter. So if you want to be able to follow him, and you can just check out and ask him the questions directly right there on our Twitter feed. All right. So as everyone knows, we have several people, especially in some of the states in Florida, New York, California, over in Nevada, Las Vegas, man, has so many fans. We've been shocked. We know Western Canada and most of Canada has a lot of hockey fans. We know there's tons that over in Europe and stuff like that. We get some of the countries still following us. But we want to bring some information that is not readily out there and available. And unfortunately, some of the stuff we're going to talk today with, isn't always exciting to talk about. It's actually quite sad with what's happening. So people know Russia invaded Ukraine February 24th in 22 here. It's still going on to the dismay of millions of people in Ukraine, Russia, and around the world. Now, in spite of the war, Russia's own professional hockey league, the KHL, still continues. Some say it's thriving, while some say that it's there to prop up and use the money to support the Russian army. Again, these are things we don't know much about. There's lots of stories, not a lot of correct information. And so today, Karl, we're going to cover as much as we can in a short period of time with you. And so why don't I get into my first question? earlier in the preseason, I'm going to predate some of this as things were starting, and some of the Russian names we may not say correctly, so you can correct us here today. There's a story that was highlighted in the papers and all throughout the internet. We talked about it with Jamie Basko of the Philadelphia Flyers, and that was a goalie. I believe he's 6'8" goalie prospect, Ivan Fedotov, who is looking probably to maybe never even step into an NHL rink now. There's a whole bunch of story behind that. Could you give us the storyline behind what happened there?
Yeah, so this is a story that's still developing. But basically what happens, Ivan Fedotov was the premier Russian goalie. As the NHL doesn't go to the World Championships or the Olympics, he was the best Russian goalie outside of America. So he was like the best Russian goalie. And then he signed a contract with Philadelphia Flyers. He was supposed to go there and play this year, but suddenly after practice in St. Petersburg, he was arrested by the Russian police and sent away to the north of Russia to do his military service. And this was before the conscription started in Russia. So nobody really knows why this happened or for what purpose, but it has been interpreted as something they did to set an example. Like, don't try to leave Russia in this critical period to go and play in America. But he was actually seen this morning in St. Petersburg playing with I think a naval hockey team or something. He's formally a part of the army right now, but he does play hockey in some capacity. Yeah, that's basically what happened.
So, and wasn't there some story about he couldn't report to the army because he was sick, or his agent was saying he wasn't sick? Like, it looked like he was trying to delay or get out, or do we know anything behind that, or is that all hearsay?
So this is something that happened the same day as he got arrested, or the following days. I don't really remember. You can basically go back to my Twitter feed. I was live tweeting through that period. But what happened was he fell ill and was sent to a military hospital without the possibility to talk to his lawyer or to his family. The official reports say that he suffered from gastritis as a result from stress or something when he got arrested. But nobody really knows. But hours after he got arrested, he fell seriously ill. Could have been poisoning, it could have been gastritis or anything.
Wow. Crazy.
It's insane to think that that's one of the more prolific individuals that, of course, given that he was drafted signed by the Philadelphia Flyers to potentially be a backup for Carter Hart. But who knows how many more of these cases are happening on an ongoing basis in Russia. It's definitely a challenge. Now, you wrote about someone, Anton Tishkin, an employee, I believe he was for a KHL club, Kunlan Red Star. Now, I'm Polish, but I may not be pronouncing it properly, so I apologize to Russians everywhere. But, he wrote something about lies about the Russian government, saying that staff and players in the KHL were summoned to the army and that they're looking to leave Russia as he refuses to join the military. Do you want to share a little bit about that story with our audience?
Yeah, so this was a tip I got from a person who knows him, basically, and has him on LinkedIn. And he is the equipment manager of Kunlan Red Star. And he has been posting on LinkedIn, basically trying to get out of the country. And he did this pretty early on after the war started, February 24th, trying to find a new job outside in Europe, outside of Russia. And then when the conscription started, he made this new post where he was asking his colleagues around Europe and North America for job as anything. Didn't have to be in hockey or with equipment or anything, but he just wanted a job outside of Russia because he wanted to avoid conscription. And this kind of blew up. People were offering to help him, but he later deleted that post. And roughly a day after, he said that his account was hacked. I don't want to speculate too much, but why he posted one thing or the other, but it makes a lot of sense to claim that your account was hacked if some people who should not know found out that he was trying to leave Russia.
Kind of sounds like either a Hollywood story or a Russia story.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, the whole thing between the U.S. and Canada, the U.S. and Russia, there's always someone hacking someone, right? You know, or being blamed for it at least. It's, you know, yeah, and that's quite interesting. We'll probably tap into a few more. So let's now on several of your tweets, you mentioned as they were piling up and going into training camp with players that were being signed out of Canada, a lot of American players that have signed in the KHL. Now, I'm going to ask you, as far as what you know, how many are playing, how many have maybe fled the country of Russia? Because we do know the Canadian embassy, at least, has warned their people to get out of Russia. Otherwise, they will not be able to protect them while this war continues.
As far as I know, nobody has left.
Wow. Okay. So what are we looking at for numbers?
Like, what do you mean by numbers? Like people.
So, like, how many signed Canadian and Americans do you know of that are playing in the KHL?
I think there's something like 50 to 60 Canadians and 15-ish Americans. But there's also a lot of players who plays under different licenses. There's like 15 North Americans who play with a Chinese license, and there's a bunch of people with Kazakh licenses.
Okay, so now with these players, I mean, I guess one of the questions that remains, I think people, I'm just going to say what I think a lot of fans of hockey and or just people who are following what's happening in Russia, could they not be leaving just because they need to make money? Is that the reason? Or could this even potentially be that they're worried that if they get caught trying to leave, they could face consequences? What are the things that you're hearing? I mean, it's kind of shocking. There's that many players in it. I mean, there's not normally that many Canadian players playing there, is there?
I think the amount of Canadian players are actually quite stable from the last few years.
Wow.
It's just the amount of Europeans that play in the league that have decreased by a lot, but and Americans, I think there's fewer, but there's so many Canadians playing there. But I think regarding like people trying to leave and so on, my speculation is that they don't want to leave, and they probably don't feel like they need to either. Like what you have to understand with foreigners who play in the KHL, they live a very secure life. They're very protected, and they, in almost every case, are not affected what happens around in the country. Like they live together with other foreigners, and they very rarely meet actual Russians or Belarusians or anything.
Okay.
Interesting. So as an aside, and you're more dialed into this than we are players able to kind of explore like the towns? Are they able to go out, or is it like similar where they're restricted to where they can go? There's maybe a curfew or something where they're, you know, it's kind of going to the rink, going to train, going for a meal, and then going home.
I'm not sure about how it is right now after the war started. But before the war, they were pretty much free to do whatever they want. But they don't live, like they live in very secluded areas. And how it is after February 24th, I don't know, because every time you try to reach a foreign player in Russia, you're shut off immediately. Like I've tried several times. You can only reach your agents, and they will not help you in that regard.
Now with that, you know, Russia is looking to prop up the purpose and the propaganda behind the war and make it seem like this is justified in their eyes through their government, right? And they've used different tactics, as we know. I mean, the Cold War is a prime example of what had happened. between the U.S. and them. But what are some of the things that are being presented or shown, whether it's flags or any kind of media means, at games, through fans or through players or through clubs, in order to prop up the war, support the war in a more visual way? Is there things happening like that, or is it just more behind the scenes?
So definitely behind the scenes, there's happening a lot. In my view, I think the propaganda has actually decreased starting this season, but the last season, February 24th until May or whenever it ended, there was a lot. Like you had Putin posters, you had like the said propaganda things, and right now the only thing I've seen is stuff that are outside of arenas. So right now there are 3 arenas in the KHL which publicly display propaganda. Yeah, you have the SED in Khabarovsk, and in Chelyabinsk you actually have a quote by Putin, which says something like, Russia is one people, there's one country, and so on. It's eerily similar to what Hitler said in his time. And this is also like just huge in front of the entrance.
Well, it's interesting because I know over here, at least in the area where we are here in Canada, as some people that hear about it or have seen the Z, or if you're American, the Z. But it's like Nazi. They're referring to it's kind of their symbol of the same kind of regime with it. Now, there were some banners that were being shown in arenas and stuff. Now, was that this year that was showing the Z inside too? Or was that previous to the start of the war?
The set appeared after the war.
Okay.
Like I saw this first time a few days after. But I have personally not seen the set inside arenas this season, but last season it was everywhere.
It was like a preparation, eh? It's okay. So this leads us to a huge question. Now, we've had some scouts on, some different writers, broadcasters come on the show, and we're asking all the same question. I'm a little bit of a draft geek guy. So when it comes to the drafting, of course, looking this year, I mean, there's really 2 superstar players there with Connor Bedard and Matev. I get Mishkov. I think you said Matev. But Mishkov was at least, if not challenging for that first. The downside would be he's Russian. Will he be able to come over? I know he signed a KHL contract now. He is injured. He's not quite come back, I don't believe yet. But with the war and the sanctions, our team's going to be weary against drafting this player. He's not able to play in tournaments right now because of the sanctions around the world. What are the chances that Mishkov could actually drop in the rankings because they're going to, in your opinion, just because of everything that's happening and the fear of drafting him, maybe he's not going to come over for 3-4 years?
I think it's very likely that he'll drop for many reasons. Partly we have the war. It could be difficult for him to actually reach North America. But there's also the usual uncertainty with KHL prospects, as you have this tradition, or what to call it, in the KHLs for a long time, that young players who are about to go over to America, you basically bury them in the minors in order for them to not showcase themselves and not go over there. So the case with Michkov now is that he doesn't really play that much, and he's basically jo-joing between the different tiers of the SCA system. So I think, based on purely hockey reasons, I think he will drop. But then there's the usual Russian uncertainty surrounding him as well.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, because there's been a few players throughout the last few years. I mean, historically in the NHL, who have come over from the KHL at a later date. The most recent names that come to mind is Kuzmenko for the Vancouver Canucks, and even Kirill Kaprizov, who he had his own issues with the Russian government over the summer. I know Bill Guerin didn't want to, and the Minnesota Wild organization didn't want to speak about it, because he's from Siberia or around that area, and he was going to be serving in the military as well. And he came over as a rookie when he was 24 years old, and he's wowed. He's made Minnesota hockey fun and exciting, but again, that dynamic where Michkov may be drafted but not show up for a little bit later or drop. So it's very interesting to find out, and it's a little disheartening because there have been some great Russian players that have played in the NHL, and I know one of the first few, like Alexander McGillney, kind of took that first step in breaking that barrier, albeit at a different time, but still similar circumstances where, you know, there was tension in the world, and was able to get to the NHL and wow fans, and we love seeing that regardless of where they're coming from, because we think hockey should be showcased all around the world, and it should be a sport that grows everywhere. So that's a pretty cool thing. So you mentioned in some of your writing that the media cube collapsed during the installation of the Lokomotiv Yaroslav Stadium. Could you allude to that a little bit and speak to that?
Yeah, I actually don't know too much about that. It was just like a news story that I stumbled upon, and that's in my tweeting, basically, I go through phases where I tweet a lot, and I feel the need to every day I need to post something new, and I was kind of in a rut at that point, and I just found like, oh shit, this thing happened, and I just posted it, and it went wild. Like I actually don't have anything to add onto that.
Okay, no, fair.
Well, so we could really play rumors here and say, could someone be sabotaging? You know, because this is their protesting.
Possibly.
Yeah, exactly. So what I mean, just from your observation, you know, with the KHL, you know, formerly the Russian Super League, et cetera. Now the ties have been severed right now between the NHL and the KHL. Do you see this affecting long term? Hypothetically, let's just say the war is done by the end of the season. You know, I mean, hypothetically, again, well, let's talk on best case scenario. We're able to put this. How long do you think it's going to be before they can work on negotiations to put something back together?
I think like if the war would end, I think it would actually go quite quick. As I think most of the hockey world is interested in seeing Russian hockey being displayed everywhere, and so is Russia, obviously. But I think it also depends on how everything develops. Like I think the IIHF, the International Hockey Federation, they have had this weird middle stance, and they will probably accept Russian hockey back very quickly, and I think the NHL would as well. But in more of the Eastern European countries like Czechia and Latvia, I think it could take a lot longer of purely historical reasons.
Fair. Well, and you know what I was thinking, Pavel? Why don't we ask Karl? We didn't put this into our questions, but why don't we ask Karl about the Ovechkin situation?
Sure. So, I mean, you know, I know that, you know Ovechkin. He's one of the biggest superstars, you know, not only for Washington, but for the league, you know, but he's always been a supporter and proponent of Vladimir Putin. And, you know, regardless of politics, you know, he had to make a statement, which, as an aside, for me personally, I don't think he needed to. But, I mean, do you want to, you know, share a little bit your thoughts about Ovechkin, you know, his representation and his status in the NHL, but also at the same time, what he means for Russian hockey?
Like, he's obviously huge for Russian hockey. He is the Tom Brady of Russian hockey. Like, he's the biggest superstar. He's the Jaromir Jagr of Russian hockey. Like, it's hard to downplay his importance. But I think my irk with him is that up until the war started, he has been an extreme Putin supporter and has helped promoting the views that Putin used to invade Ukraine. And while he hasn't said anything after the war, he still has a lot of responsibility in everything that led up to the war in Ukraine and everything that's going on right now. So I think he should be pressed harder on his stance in this war, more than the other Russians, because the other Russians have not done propaganda for Putin, but he has.
So do you think if and we're hearing what you're saying. I know there's been a couple times we've talked about this, and this is precursor to the war with the support of Putin. There was concerns about some of his support, but do you think that he's cautious potentially because of the backlash with family back there, or do you think that that's kind of over, that we're not dealing with Germany per se?
Like he is a human being as everyone else. Like it could be that he has some, like he's worried about his family, but he's also has very, very deep ties to the
Okay.
power structures. Putin
Okay.
is a personal friend of his, and I think his wife is also the daughter of one of the main oligarchs, and so on. Like
Okay.
he could feel worried, but if you compare his situation with basically anyone else with a Russian citizenship, he has nothing to worry about.
Yeah. Well, which player was there not? The Russian
Panarin.
government was Panarin.
Panarin
Yeah.
had issues. Yeah, and
Yeah.
he criticized the war, or just before, I guess it was the build up to, and then it happens that there was some issues back home with his family. Like again, it was speculation. There was a lot of hearsay. We didn't really know the whole story. I mean, maybe Carl, you can speak to it. But at the end of the day, he had to go back and bring his family over to New York, to the United States. But Carl, any thoughts on the situation with Artemi Panarin?
I think it's very brave of Panarin to done what he's done, because he knows better than anyone, like the actual life of a Russian citizen. And like I lived in Russia as well, and I did not dare to do a lot against the political regime there, for obvious reasons. And I think it's admirable by Panarin, because he didn't have to do this.
Right.
He could see the political escalation in the country, and he decided to do something even though he didn't have to, because he's a hockey player. He's not a politician.
Yeah. All right. Well, one last final question. I'd like to, now I know you talk post-Soviet hockey, but I just want to take a moment, go back. Obviously, you're a lot younger, but have you followed any of the famous of the five, the Karlamovs, the KLM line, those days of the Soviet hockey days? Did you have any favorite players that you liked from back in those days?
Like that's obviously before I was born, even. But
Yeah.
so yeah, I've only watched like tape afterwards.
Yeah.
But I think I don't really have a favorite player per se, but I find it really fascinating the way that Soviet hockey developed the sport, just by how they used their units, and playing a sort of collective playing style. And I think that's very cool.
Well, and it's interesting because even in the NHL now, they talk about if you want to play good defense, you got to play as a 5-man unit, and that whole 5-man. I mean, but it was interesting because they literally played a 5-man, all five shifted at the same time, and so definitely. So in throughout Russia, say obviously there's other places that had followed, not just Russia back then, as the Soviet Union as it was known. But is there a player that's talked about or looked at that previous back in those days that is kind of looked up to as one of the greats of all time, more so than another?
I say Fetisov is probably one of the greatest, like that's talked about more than the others, and I think it has a lot to do with his post-career activities. Like he was the minister of sports or something in Russia, and he stayed relevant for a long time.
Wow.
Larionov is getting up there as well right now because he took over Torpedo Nizhny Novgorod. Yeah. So I'd say Fetisov. Sorry?
He's coached the junior team, right? Evan, am I wrong? Larionov or no?
The World Juniors?
Yeah, was he one of the coaches or no?
I don't think he was a junior. I think he represented Team Russia.
No, he coached. Did he coach or no? I could be mixing up my guys, but I thought Larionov was coaching the last World Juniors Team Russia.
So I'll tell you what, since none of us have an answer, guys, in the comment section, even though this is recorded, give us the information. But you know what? I'm going to tell you what happens on a pre-recorded session. Pavel goes in and answers himself when we've got a pre-recording instead of letting you guys answer. So make sure you tell him to let you guys guess this time.
Now, Karl, I have one more final question. It's a quick one. It's an easy softball in baseball, as they say. An open net, as one would want in hockey. Do you have a team that you follow in the NHL that you like and enjoy kind of tuning in from time to time, or no?
Yeah, I'd say I have a soft spot for Montreal Canadiens.
Okay.
And it basically stems from being a bit of a language nerd. So I love the idea of having a bilingual hockey team that also has the history. But I unfortunately live on the wrong continent to be a passionate fan of an NHL team. But if I had to pick, it would be Montreal.
Well, having said that, let me write off of that and add a little more another question. So there's always a decision that it's really tough because it's always been known every general manager needs to be a francophone and or a coach. And they're starting to change that now for the first time. Do you think it's important when you got 50-50 for language and especially for media? Probably more of the French media is even there's a larger portion. Do you think that's important for a team like the Montreal Canadiens?
I think I'm entirely the wrong person to ask because I've never been to Canada and I really have no insights into how what's language how it matters in Quebec. But I imagine you would get probably a different answer from the Anglophone community than from the Francophone. So it's. Yeah, I like the idea, even though it's bad for sports.
That's a very good political non-answer, so we like it.
Well, I will say, so if you guys are following us here right now, this show was pre-recorded on Saturday right now at the time. It was started at 5 o'clock Karl's time. Karl Månsson, he's a journalist, freelance writer, editor at HockeyNews.se. He follows everything post-Soviet hockey. And you'll notice his answer to the Montreal Canadiens. The guy stays in his lane. He stays in his ice lane. So he's sticking to what he knows, and he's not going to make up something like my partner, Pavel the Cat Insider. Just joking, man. Just joking. Well, thank you so much, Karl. We appreciate you taking the time to join us. And definitely we might have a few questions. I'll be tweeting you and seeing what we can get. So, guys, make sure you tweet him. Ask all your questions around the KHL, and he'll try to as much as possible. He's going to be making a few changes in his life. And so if you follow him, you can hear what's happening. He's going to be doing a lot more in teaching. Maybe he can teach some of you guys a little bit more about the KHL.
You can definitely teach me. And Karl, again, it's an honor. Thank you for being on the show. It's a treat. You really taught us a lot and brought some insight. And we hope to have you back on the show. As we like to say on the show, that when you're on the show, you get promoted somehow. So wherever you end up in your future endeavors, you're welcome. But, any final thoughts you have for our audience or for us?
No, not really. So I would have to say thank you to you guys as well. I'm happy to join again, or I will let you know if I come by Edmonton. Would love to do that.
Oh, absolutely.
We're a little further from Montreal, unfortunately. It's a bit of a gap, so
we're a lot like Siberia. It's a great place. We got a world-class arena, probably one of the best arenas. I believe the best arena right now in the entire globe. So it's an excellent place to be. Again, thank you so much. And thanks for taking the time and joining us. We're maybe at the end of the season or at the end of the war, somewhere along there, we'll make sure we touch base, or if some things just go haywire, we need to get some more connections. We'll definitely connect. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Well, that was definitely interesting.
Oh, yeah. We were very excited to have Karl Månsson on the show. He really brought some insight into not only the KHL, but the political kind of background of what's been going on and his pulse kind of on what's been going on. So we thank him for his insight. And remember, guys, to give him a follow. We had his Twitter handle at the bottom. Yeah. So make sure you give him a follow. Make sure you give us a follow. We love hearing from him. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say it's at Karl_KHL. I've done it so much this past week. I know it off by heart.
I was getting to it, but okay, thank you. You beat me to the punch.
It, so I'm going to emphasize what my partner just mentioned to you guys all here right now. So I just want to mention again, so every Wednesday night we come on live here at 7 p.m. For some of you following on some of our Facebook feeds, we apologize. This may be a replay. We're going to be replaying this on a couple of our Facebook feeds. So, hey, man, complain to Facebook. They knocked us off. They've been really trying to slow down Two Guys and Hockey Talk. So thanks to those of you who are following on Facebook over on the Sports Empire Network. Thank you for our partnership with these guys. They allow us this platform to use, as well as anyone that you're following on our Twitter feeds, whether it's Sports Empire Network, at Hockey Talk with my co-host Pavel, or on mine at REVS, and also on our YouTube. They're all running live right now, but we will be sending this back out for our Two Guys page so that you can still get a show, and we'll get some through our various groups that follow us. So, give us a follow, like, and subscribe.
Mark Zuckerberg, that's not very meta of you, man. Not very meta at all.
No, man. Come on. Let's get this right there, Zuckerberg.
We're just two guys looking for a way to convince that hockey girl, that we want to be heard. Evan, what are your thoughts of the Karl Månsson interview?
Okay. Well, I mean, first of all, let me just actually bring us off here to come in. First of all, I mean, it's very interesting that the propaganda slowed down once the war hit. It's like they knew it was coming. It's like, why were all the arenas last season building towards all this? That's scary. I mean, I think we all knew that, but they were actually getting ready. It's interesting that the Canadian players are very safe. I know I've talked to a few people off air and even told them about what was coming up. Some of them disagree, but of course they're not the people following closely like Karl. But that must be the reason that nobody's left yet. They have to be feeling safe. And let's face it, what a way to look like you're a good country, even if you have invaded someone, by being careful with the people who are in your country, because that's what could start and bring other countries into this war outside of just Ukraine right now, right?
Yeah, it's a delicate, complex situation, and it's tough to just really gauge. It's not black and white, right? I mean, that's the challenge. And as I indicated earlier, there's livelihoods at stake, and not even livelihoods. It's even people trying to train to continue to get back into the NHL somehow to prove themselves, or even AHL, right? And so if this is their opportunity to skate and get an opportunity to work somehow, I mean, that's the world we live in. So at the end of the day, people are going to make certain choices. There's a lot going on in the world. We're trying to manage all the complexities of what's been happening. And I think, it's an ongoing, evolving situation that we'll keep our eyes on. And we're going to continue to report on our Facebook page, on our Twitter page. Make sure you guys check out Karl Månsson, us. Again, that's what it is. But it's very insightful. And again, Karl really knows what's been going on the ground. So we appreciate his insight, because it's really helpful to know, right? Because sometimes things can seem so far away that they don't affect us so directly that maybe we feel indifferent to it, or we just feel kind of numb to the situation. But that's my perspective. That's no one else's perspective. That's just how I see what's been unfolding.
Absolutely. So what I'd like to do is, because Kyle stayed on our show longer the other week here, last week, so I didn't get a chance to get to my REVS top 15. I want to bring it up because I'm just going to quickly cover in on two players because we talked about them today. So here we go. On my early season, I put up there. So now I want everyone to remember different people when they post this. So Craig Button talks about his ranking is top, and his is top 30. Because those are the guys who have the highest chance of actually playing 300 plus games and be great. So Craig Button says the best in the next 5 years. Bob McKenzie will tell you that it's based on what the scouts are picking, coming up for that draft. Everybody has a different take. Mine is based on what I think they will have within their career. So this is not a mock. This is not who I see. I do not see Mishkov going in a mock draft, number 2 overall. I definitely believe he will fall now no matter what. But I believe their career, Mishkov will still be number 2. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the 2 easy. I really wanted to talk about Adam Fantilli today, but I'm going to save that for next week. And I want to talk about Bedard and Mishkov just really quickly for you guys. Now, I think we all know about with Connor Bedard. So already he's 12 games in. I don't know what he's done here tonight. 12 games in, 21 points. He's got 10 goals in those 12 games. Now, I've sent a note out. So Cam Robinson, if you're following us, he's a scout and works for Elite Prospects. I believe that he was a right wing player early on, and Regina has moved him into the center position, which is going to be a total difference for his career. And I'm wondering, early on, we weren't seeing as good a play as we expected coming in, or even at partway through last year. And I'm thinking that could be due to taking on a new position. Now, maybe I'm totally lost on this, but I was positive he was doing a lot of right wing, unless that was just international play. Now, I have some interesting news. I'm not going to go in. Everyone has been hearing about Connor Bedard. If not, go look it up on the internet. But
Who?
Connor, someone named Connor, another Connor.
I think it's a rite of passage. If your name is Connor, you have to be elite at hockey. So I'm just saying.
All right.
If you want to name your boy Connor or girl, Connor, whatever, all the power to you, then they're going to be good at hockey. That's all I know.
Okay, so I do want to mention here, just for some of you guys out there, if you are a Canucks fan, it just came on. So in 2011, Connor Bedard is a super fan of the Vancouver Canucks. So you guys are going to go crazy right now, especially with them starting a bad season. Maybe we'll take a few minutes. I don't know if we have time today. But he's a super fan. He actually cried when they lost in the 2011 finals. He actually shared that with Thomas Drance, I believe it was, or was it Isaiah, over in the Athletic. So anyway, so super fan, really interested in him. So that's going to get a lot of stories rumbling. Does he want to go back? In fact, but I'll tell you what I love. A lot of people don't share about their most favorite hockey team too much until they're drafted because they don't want to make – but I love it. He's still a kid. He's still a kid and he's still having fun because he will become, whoever he puts that on as number 1 overall, he will become that team's that will be his for life. I see him as a one-team person. So, okay, quickly, Mishkov. I am knowing many of you guys have been saying, oh, Mishkov, no way that he's going to drop that much. I've been saying it. All the guys out there are telling you this. You guys need to know they will drop and he will drop further. And the reason he's going to drop is because they don't know what they're getting right now with what's happening in Russia and his contract. Now, I know one of our regular guests that come on the show, Jordan, you've talked about that if Arizona gets him, they have no problem waiting. We all know that story. I agree. We'll see where they're going to draft at, though. But I do not see them taking him still at 2 or 3. I do not see that still. I'm pretty positive. I do think Adam Fantilli in my mock is going to go number 2, but we'll talk about him next week. So Mishkov, he is playing in the VHL. He only played 1 game so far since coming back from his injury. So he's got 8 points in his 6 games and 6 goals in those 6 games. But I want you to realize the VHL, as Patrick Conway, one of our other guests on our show, has said that writes on post-Soviet hockey. He actually talks about how the VHL is like the junior league over in Russia. So until he's in the KHL producing, guys, right now, I believe they're not too worried about him trying to show off because they have no interest in Russia wanting Mishkov to come over here or get drafted high. That's kind of my take on that. So,
nope. Well said. And I think Jordan also alluded to the point where if you're a team like a Chicago or in Arizona or even a Montreal, which is in the rebuild stages, you're not competing right now. So you can pick up one of these players and you can get excited and you will be competitive in about 3 to 5 years. I mean, maybe you'll speed up the process like the Rangers did with their rebuild or the LA Kings. But really, you're waiting in the future where he's had a bit of experience or that player has had experience in order to develop, maybe play in the minors and then get us footing in the NHL and get going and then be competitive and try to make the playoffs, the postseason, and then compete for the Stanley Cup. So I mean, at the same time, players take a little bit longer to develop. Not everyone develops the same way. I'm going to give a prime example, and I think Buffalo Sabre fans are going to be very excited about this. Rasmus Dahlin has been elite this season. Now, he was the number 1 draft pick overall, and when he first started, it didn't come out right away. He struggled. Now, he's a defenseman, so they take a little bit longer. But at the same time, it takes a while to develop a defenseman. Same thing with centers. Centers are coveted. You alluded to being whether it's on right wing, maybe less coveted than the center position, because of course you want to be deep down the middle. But as Buffalo has engaged through this past season and been playing better, and although they lost to Seattle recently, Rasmus Dahlin has been putting up numbers and been solid. He's no Bobby Orr. I'm not going to go that far. But he is playing in good company, and he's making himself a very elite defenseman, and he's playing smart plays. And whether it's the systems that they're implementing, whether it's the team is playing a good structure, he is getting to that level. But where's he coming from? It's been 4 or 5 years since his development, since he first got it broken to the league. So now you've got a guy that took a while to get into it, and he's performing at the level that you expected him to. Don't expect him to be Austin Matthews or Connor McDavid. Those don't happen every day, right? That's all I'm going to say. So be excited,
that's fair.
But it's going to be a bit before you get to that point. And playing with men at that level, it's tough. Like, playing in the NHL is an elite level, right? We talked about this with some other guests. Even the fourth liners and the top 6 guys or the bottom 6 guys on defense, they're the most elite talented. There you go, Evan. They're the most talented guys if they go down a notch in terms of the competition. So,
it's true. It's true. So no, and Rasmus, I will say, I still think Svechnikov's a better player overall, and I still think he'll have a better career. But now, Rasmus Dahlin right now, if he can continue what he started this season, I'm going to be eating my words on that one, definitely.
I think both Carolina and Buffalo are very happy with those picks. Both Svechnikov's with how he's been performing, and with Rasmus Dahlin. So I don't think either of those fan bases are disappointed in the picks they got there. So
well, I remember Svechnikov when he was drafted that year. He's put on a lot of solid muscle that not a lot of people thought he could, because not a lot of people can get that much. But he was a little bit of a late bloomer. So okay. So let's quickly touch in on something that I think that looking at our time, we're going to be running. There's a lot of NHL stuff. Let's quickly talk about. I want to touch in on the ECHL news here right away. Just quickly to make you guys aware of something. I told them on our Twitter I was going to give this some attention, but then we'll finish off with some thoughts kind of on the Vegas Golden Knights. Okay. So let's do. I'm going to get your thoughts on that as soon as we finish. So guys, I'm going to bring this onto our stream here. So there is a group out there that has been following the ECHL. They are called the 5 for Fighting podcast, and they cover ECHL material, and they put a lot of the fights and the different stuff out there. This is a tweet directly from the ECHL that said, "We hereby request you remove the ECL fights that are still posted to your YouTube page before we are forced to report copyright violation on those as well." Now, please remember, I'm going to show you now the tweet that was sent out. Now, this tweet now was sent out from this group. They said, "I'm sorry to say, after today, the YouTube channel is done. After almost 400 videos posted to promote the ECHL, the ECHL wants me to remove the fight videos from YouTube. I have done nothing but support the league to include bringing in new fans and draw interest to the ECHL, which we know they need. I promoted players for the podcast, posted their fights, promoted the league via the podcast, not making a dime, so he's non-monetized just like us. It's very disheartening. I simply wanted to preserve league and fight history and bring clips of the ECHL and its players to a broader audience. To anyone who watched the channel and enjoyed it, seriously, thank you so much. It was so much damn fun and brought so many great interactions with fans and players. Thank you. Hope you're happy at ECHL Hockey." Now, I'm going to get your thought on this before we go to the Golden Knights. I just want to put my last thought in on this. If the ECHL really wants support, for those that don't know, the farm system of the National Hockey League is the AHL, the American Hockey League, and the system below them is the so it's the third highest league in North America. So the third highest league, it is part of a farm system for development of players. We could go through dozens of names. Maybe we should sometime.
Jordan Binnington.
Yeah. So in fact, I wouldn't mind getting someone from the ECHL. I think we should reach out and see what we can do here, because this is what I think. Removing all that content is not helping the ECHL. They could have went in and had a conversation on the side and found a way to work with these guys to actually build up the game and even use their content on something for them, so that they could promote still their own material. But to lose it all and never see it out there, this does not look good, man. They got a black eye. Give me your thought before we wrap up with the Vegas Golden Knight thoughts.
I agree with you, which I hate doing because you never seem to be right in my mind. But I agree. I don't know why they would ban that. Now, maybe there's something at work behind the scenes that we're not aware of or privy to that information. That's fair. But if there's a channel that's not monetized and is looking for promoting the game of hockey, especially at a lower level, to people that normally aren't very privy to or aware of, I think that's a plus. So all the power to them for doing that. I think it's disappointing because fighting will always be a part of hockey. You can never completely eliminate it. Now, have fights reduced, have concussions reduced, have injuries reduced, 100%. And that is what the NHL will work towards. And of course, other leagues will work towards safety and health for the players. Agreed. That being said, it's a part of the game. And it was more than just fights in part of this YouTube channel page. It was connecting people with the fans, with the teams, with broadening their horizon and the views that people have. So I'm a little disappointed that this happened.
Yeah.
I don't know what the history is, but I think they need to somehow take a step back and reassess what they're doing, because sometimes there's certain directions that people go and it's not the right path. So that's my only
Okay. So let's get into the Golden Knights. Quick comment. Hey, Jake, welcome to Two Guys in Hockey Talk. You said, what's up, guys? I heard great things. Letting you guys know I'm a Golden Knights fan, born and raised in Vegas.
Welcome, Jake. Vegas is a beautiful town, beautiful city, and I've been there a few times myself. Love it. I'm not a gambler. So, Evan, what are your thoughts on the Vegas Golden Knights starting this year with Bruce Cassidy, Bruce Cassidy behind the bench?
So it was interesting when we started our season on episode 2 this year, season 4. We had Leah Hextall, first female full-time play-by-voice for ESPN, and she's covering the Vegas game. She's been calling on those, and she talked about how very interesting it was. Who else did we have on the show that was very interested?
Jake Edenbaum. Who's a big NFL guy, but he's a big Vegas.
Well, Jake Ellenbogen, but there was someone else we had on. Oh, I think it was Jamie Basco with Philly. He was very intrigued. But anyway, so this is interesting because I don't think anyone saw them being 6-2 out of the gate, being on top of the Pacific Division. These kind of starts is what puts them in a playoff spot, even if they deal with. We all talked about goaltending, whether that could hold in. I think they're playing a really strong team game right now. I mean, Jake, you can mention what maybe in the comments, if you're still with us here, let us know why you think they're in a 6-2 position when a lot of people thought they might be playing 500 or 600 hockey at this point. So I actually felt they had it in them. I think they got the right core. I was just worried about the goaltending situation. I think that they're sitting pretty right now. Your thoughts before we wrap up, man?
I think they've impressed me more than I thought they would, because my biggest question was with their cap circumvention and just trying to manage the players. I mean, I know they signed Nick Roy last minute, to that big deal, and trying to decide who's in, who's not, But I gotta say, I'm impressed with not only Jack Eichel, who has been solid for that team. He's really stepped up after the injury last year and struggling last year. But Logan Thompson has been solid for that team, and he could definitely contend not only for the Vezina but Calder, right? Just that's how good he is. Team defense, they've been solid. They have a good back end there. Pietrangelo has still not lost a step. I know that people think, he's gotten older and he's not going to perform the way he did in St. Louis. I think he's been good, and I think Bruce Cassidy knows how to play a systems-based coaching system. And it was successful in Boston, and I think it's successful in Vegas.
Great thoughts, guys. We'd like to continue talking, but unfortunately, we're going to have to call it a wrap. Again, you might be following us here. Our Facebook feeds at Two Guys went down on us earlier. We apologize. We are reposting late tonight, so you may be watching this on a rewind. I'll be posting it approximately around 10 p.m. on a replay we'll take from our full video feed, and I'll be putting it up so you can go back and watch it tomorrow on your Facebook. So just so you guys know what's going on, we're going to find ways to get you all your hockey content. And next week, Lucas Willett from the United States Premier Hockey League, he's lighting that league up right now with the Utah Outliers. He'll be live on our show, so come with your questions for this guy. Get on Elite Prospects, look him up, find out some answers. And in the meantime, contact the ECHL. Give them crap for shutting down stuff that's promoting their league. All right, buddy. Well, that's a wrap for me. In the meantime and in between time,
Keep your sticks on the ice. Stay safe, everyone.
cheers.